our first guest speaker is Chris Cochran. Chris is a person of color, a transgender activist originally from Glace Bay, Cape Breton. She now lives in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where she is better known by her drag persona, Elle Noir. She is an esthetician and makeup artist by trade, where she works independently as well with stage and film. Chris is known for her outspoken words on the current and past climate of the world. She has been at the forefront of many issues dealing with both the LGBTQIA2 community as well as the African Nova Scotian community. As of 2018, she has now completed her surgical transition and wants to continue educating and learning from life's experiences. So if you know her as Elle or as Chris, she is known for spanning many communities and continues to try to bring those communities together.
My name is Chris Cochran. I was born as Christopher William Cochran in Glace Bay, Nova Scotia. So I'm from a very, very small town. At a very young age, I always knew there was something different with me. And it was more prevalent when we got to puberty and I started seeing the girls in school doing everything that I wanted to do. You know, I wanted to have the long flowy hair and I wanted to wear the nice frilly dresses. And I literally asked my mother when I was 10 years old when are my boobs gonna come in? And she frankly told me, I don't think it's gonna happen, and then I gained 300 pounds and they came in. But from then on, I just started to feel like I knew I wasn't like the other boys in school, you know? I didn't think like the other boys, I didn't act like the other boys, I didn't feel like I belonged to a group. Now, this is kind of a stem that has went through my whole life, so I'm gonna try to get this out as much as I possibly can. I am transgender, but I'm also a Native American, Chinese, African, and an Acadian woman. So, and as a drag queen, it's fantastic, because I just like to say when Whitney Houston's singing about I'm every woman, she's singing about me. So, so that has been with me through my whole life. I wasn't a man, I wasn't a woman, I wasn't black, I wasn't white, I wasn't fat, I wasn't skinny. I was always that person that was that middle ground person. And that kind of, when I was younger, was one of those things that kind of just stayed with me and kind of made me almost hate myself, to the point where it came to self-harm. And it took a lot for me to pull myself out of that despair that I was in. But being from a small community, I never heard the word transgendered. I barely heard the word gay. I like to call Cape Breton kind of like Duck Dynasty and Cops if they had a child. I love being from a small community, but being from a small community means that you sometimes are around small community minds. But through the proactiveness of my girls, of my people, and of me, Cape Breton now has the second largest pride in Canada. So, at least coast of Canada, I should say, in Canada. Well, when I was in the Navy, I found something that would be the catalyst that kind of propelled me into the person that I am today. When I did my basic training out in Vancouver, and it was very much in the closet when I was out there, because we don't have the don't ask, don't tell, but we still have the very old boys club, you know, like the, you know, we're not going to ask you if you're gay, and we don't want to know if you're gay, so we don't talk about it. But I started drag in 2005, 2005. And that was kind of like a new thing for me. That was kind of like a persona. It was kind of a way for me to hide in plain sight without actually being hidden. So Elle Noir started in 2005. But after a while, I was starting to see that I was more in Elle than I was out of Elle. And I started to have these feelings. And I didn't really know how to deal with them. So what does a 20-year-old do when they have unlimited income and you're in the Navy? You drink. And that's all you do. You drink when you're happy, you drink when you're sad, you drink when you're mad. And that's what I did. I did so much so that I had to go to rehab because it was getting to start to affect my life. In that, I had to take therapy. And when I was in the therapy class, I had one-on-one sessions, and slowly it started to come out that maybe there's something more to me than just being a gay drag queen. So when I left the Navy in 2007, I moved to Toronto. Coming from Glace Bay and moving to Toronto was a big transition, you know. I like to say Halifax is a little city because that's what it is. It's a city, but it's not really a city. When you're on the subway, no one speaks English because there's so many different cultures and stuff, which is fantastic. And that's how I found out the word transgender. That's when I started seeing the first transgender. And I started associating that with myself. And then I decided I was going to come back to Halifax and I was going to live my life as a trans woman. But I had this fear that my family wasn't going to accept me. I'm from a very Catholic family. I was an altar boy. I like to say I was an altar boy because I got to wear white and white Floyd dresses, but that's another thing. But my grandmother was very diehard Catholic, and I was like, they're not going to accept me. So I moved back, and I started my therapy here. To become a trans woman, you have to go through a lot of therapy. You have to go through psychiatrists and doctors and make sure that everything is okay before you start your hormone therapy, because hormone therapy is very, very hard on the body, and it's irreversible. There's effects that you can have. But I was very confident that this is what I wanted to do. So I started my transition in 2010 with my hormone replacement therapy. But before that, I had to tell my parents. So I was at Easter dinner, and I just blurted out to them, I think I'm going to be a woman, and I'm going to start taking hormones. And I was building this up in my mind, saying to my mother, going, oh, I had a fight, I had the list of everything, and she looked at me and said, that's nice, do you want gravy on your potatoes? And I sat there, and I was furious, and she's like, why are you mad at me? And I was like, because I had a list of this, I had a PowerPoint, had everything, and now you're just sitting there and saying you're perfectly okay with it. The only thing she said to me was that, make sure you're safe. If anything happens to you, I don't know if I can deal with it myself. So May of 2010, I started my hormones therapy. In June of 2011, at 12 a.m. in the morning, I got a knock on the door. Now, I was living in kind of a seedy area where I was at, and the cops would show up periodically to ask for people. Got a knock on the door at 12 o'clock. It's the police. I'm like, oh God, we did what now? I opened the door, and I saw two men in masks, and they proceeded to shoot at me. I got the door halfway closed, and they were shooting a gun off beside my head. We finally got the door shut, but then I heard a loud bang and a heat rush. We turned the lights on, and we realized that I was shot in the arm. So from here to here was gone and now on the wall. I had two decisions. One, am I going to just hide and stop my transition and just hide away and just go back to being a man and just not live my life? Or am I going to get up? Am I going to keep moving on? Am I going to dust it off and I'm going to perform? Well, I tell you, 3 days later I was back on stage. So I got back to performing. But there was a new anger inside of me and a new, I wouldn't say hate, but a new movement inside of me that was like, I don't just want to do this for me. I want to start doing this for the younger generation, and I want to do it for the women that can't speak for themselves. It is a statistical fact that trans women, 50% of trans women will attempt suicide before the age of 19. That goes up to 80% if you're a woman of color. 90% of trans women of color will be either physically, mentally, or sometimes killed. So, I recently had an interview and somebody asked me, well, why would you choose to be in a minority that's so bad when you're already in a minority? And I said, well, first of all, I didn't choose to be black, that kind of just came with the territory. And I didn't choose to be a trans woman. That was already instilled in me. And I hear a lot of days, especially now, especially with the orange tangerine that's in the United States government. I don't say his name, it's not even worth saying his name, so. Well, let's face it, come on, I'm a black trans woman that works. I'm like the Antichrist to those people, so. I don't see it as a negative I see it as a positive. I'm a trans woman, I'm a black trans woman, and I think it's fantastic. This past December, I finally had my surgery, my lower surgery, my gender-conforming surgery, as people would say. And it wasn't until 3 weeks ago that I could look at myself in a full-length mirror and say, finally, I am on the outside as I am on the inside.
Dr. Lynn was the first African Canadian to join the executive ranks of the Canadian Labour Congress, and she was elected to the General Vice President's position. Lynn is a native of Truro, one of 10 children in a family of community leaders, including the late Burnley Rocky Jones. Lynn has been a lifelong civil rights and human rights activist. The scope of her work is vast. For several years, Lynn has been involved in the Global African Congress, whose objective includes organizing a Canadian Reparations Commission, a campaign to seek reparatory justice for the effects of slavery and racial injustice. Her protest has always focused on all aspects of social, political, and economical inclusions, with special attention to issues on feminism, class, race, ability, and poverty. She is an educator, a community leader, a labor organizer, and a truly inspiring speaker who you'll hear when I step down. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lynn Jones.
I'm always overjoyed when I walked into this room and I saw so many familiar faces from so many parts of the community. Did my heart good. Two people from the labor movement on International Women's Day, when International Women's Day was originally founded, for those of you that don't know, of labor, to have two people in the room, of which I know one is actually retired. I don't know about my other sister here. No, so actually one, that's not acceptable. So in the town of Truro, to begin with, there should be no International Women's Day without a strong labor presence in the house, actively taking part, actively being here, actively supporting financially and otherwise, because most of us, how many in the room are working people who are, now look at that. I particularly wore this shirt. You can take it anywhere you want today. And it says, "We've been here." And I think that could go for women and African people. But then for African people, we'll get to that for 400 years. I was speaking just this week, and I said, for African Heritage Month, there's a little private thing that happens in the black community that we talk about, and they may get mad because I'm giving away some of the secrets of the black community that you all don't get to learn about, but it's been often noted that we call African Heritage Month Black Employment Month. And that's because by saying Black Employment Month is that many a times people do not engage the black community in terms of the issues that affect our community and what happens in our community. But come African Heritage Month or Black Employment Month, the phones are ringing and the texts are going, and look at their heads nodding around the room. But in my mind, African Heritage Month is 365 days of the year. So keep that in mind. Take a step back, way before our time, and remind you of a quote of an anti-racism advocate, and many of you know the name, Sojourner Truth. Sojourner Truth. Anybody heard of the name Sojourner Truth? Her quote was actually later popularized by Bell Hooks, who many of you, of course, in this day and age would have heard of. But she asked white people of her day, "Ain't I a woman?" I'll repeat, "Ain't I a woman?" because, and as you'll see, so much happened that talked about women, but erased people of color and Aboriginal women from the whole scenario. So Sojourner Truth was saying, well, basically I'm a woman here too, but apparently I'm not, because you haven't included me.